on the left-hand column of our Cornell notes from the other day, and we are going to continue them. Your new heading is what is evolution? So left-hand column, you're going to put what, not with a pen, you're not. You're going to put what is evolution? Changes, transform life over time. Now, is it changing one individual over time?
No.
What is it changing?
The population.
Yes, this is population. Population change over time. The man we attribute a lot of what we believe today, his name is Charles Darwin. He wrote The Origins of Species, and he had two big ideas: descent with modification and natural selection. Bye, girls.
Bye. Love you.
Love you too. So what is evolution? Changes transform life over time in populations. Charles Darwin and The Origin of Species gave us two ways: descent with modification and natural selection. Remember, guys, smarter, not harder. In your Cornell notes, abbreviate as much as you can. You don't have to write whole sentences. You're getting down main ideas. Should be wrapping it up. All right. So new heading, new ink. We're going to talk about now descent with modification. The left-hand column. Descent with modification, left-hand column. Species today descended from ancestral species. It is slow and gradual. They accumulate modifications, adaptations, results in diversity. Adaptation's a academic vocabulary word you have to know. It's the process of adjusting behavior, physiology, or structure to become more suited to the environment. I like to say changes in the body to fit a location. So an adaptation is change in body to fit a location. Like our rabbits yesterday, right? The white-haired rabbits did better in what sort of environment? The snowy one, right? And the brown-haired rabbits did better where? In the desert, because it was brown, right? So adaptation changes in a body to fit a location. To fit a location. I'm sorry, that I know that logo cuts it off. Change in a body to fit a location. Should be getting close to wrapping this one up. Adaptation, changes in a body to fit a location. So let's do our polling. We're going to read through this question. Just like always, if you think it's A, what number are you going to hold up? B, C, and D? All right, here we go. Niles Eldridge and Stephen J. Gould researched the lenses of the eyes of fossil trilobites of different species. In 1972, they published a paper in which they described the tendency of a species to remain the same until a sudden change in the environment causes a new related species to appear. Which hypothesis was most challenged by the work of Eldridge and Gould? Take a moment and read. I've only got a few people making a choice. You got to make a choice and hold it up. Show us what you choose.
If we didn't talk about it, it's probably not the answer. What's a familiar name?
It was the only name you recognize. Remember, Star likes to give you distractors, right? They like to make you feel like there's some big secret you don't know. All right, those of you that I see answering, you're right. It was Darwin's hypothesis that the development of a species is a slow, gradual process. Awesome. All right. Because had we talked about Reedy, Heckel, or Wallace? No. Nope. All right, new heading, new ink, left-hand column. This is one of those vocab words from yesterday, that natural selection.
You mean from the day before?
Yeah, day before and yesterday. So this is where individuals well-suited for their environment leave more offspring. What is the word we use in biology to define an organism that's able to reproduce at a high rate? What do we say they are? They are, starts with F. It doesn't mean strong.
Fit.
Yes, they're fit, right? Individuals with well-suited for their environment leave more offspring, meaning they have a high fitness level. This is known as survival of the fittest. What? Oh, that's just walkie. I thought it was the announcements. So fitness is the ability of an individual to survive and reproduce. This is where we get that saying, survival of the fittest. So if you look at that picture, right, we've got the brown bugs and the red bugs. Or it's green, isn't it? And the birds are actually able to see the green bugs easier than the red bugs. So which ones actually survive long enough to reproduce? Right. Just like the moths we talked about the other day, right? In the coal town. Initially, the gray moths were the most fit until the soot got on the trunks of the trees. Then what color moth was able to survive? The black ones survived, right? So natural selection can be summed up with the statement, survival of the fittest. Now, there's several ways that evolution can happen. You can have genetic drift, natural selection, gene flow, and a lot of that vocab that we discussed in class yesterday, those are all mechanisms, pathways through which evolution can occur. Give me a fist of 5. Are we good? Got one still riding, so we'll hang tight a second. I do have a brain break for y'all today, so once we're halfway through today, we'll take a quick break. So keep pushing. Yeah. All right, here we go. Another question. Adaptations that result from natural selection are expected to increase the fitness of an organism. In terms of natural selection, Which of the following best describes fitness? Read your options. Let me see. Hold them high. Green table, I don't see anybody's answers. Okay. Most of us got it. So remember, we have to get to the point of reproduction. We have to make offspring. So the answer here is 3. So most bacteria is killed when you take antibiotics. How many of you have ever been sick? You go to the doctor and they prescribe antibiotics, right? Yeah? However, sometimes the strong bacteria will survive. And when they survive, they actually move on to reproduce. They have fitness in that environment. Has anybody ever heard of antibiotic-resistant bacteria? We now have diseases because we've used antibiotics so commonly. We now have bacteria that don't respond to it at all. So really you get into a situation where there is minimal treatment because this bacteria has evolved to not be killed by those antibiotics. Have you ever heard of MRSA or flesh-eating bacteria? That's one of the ones that it's really hard to treat because it's evolved so much we don't have anything it'll respond to. So natural selection, we've already taken notes over this, so we're just going to talk through it. If an organism is better at gathering food, it's more likely to survive and reproduce, like the bird beaks we looked at the beginning of the class, right? That toucan is going to do better in an environment with fruit. Would he do so well on Lake Waco?
No.
Could he eat fish?
No.
No, right? If an organism is better at finding shelter that protects it from the environment and predators, it's more likely to survive and reproduce as well. If an organism can outrun a predator, it is more likely to survive and reproduce. You don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than the person next to you, right? Have you ever heard that joke? And then if an organism can camouflage itself better than its neighbor, it's more likely to survive and reproduce. Where did we see that yesterday? What did we do yesterday?
That thing.
Simulator.
The simulator, right? So the white rabbits live longer in what environment? The snow. And the brown rabbits live better in what environment? The desert. Okay. Another question. Most animals avoid eating monarch butterflies due to their bad taste. Viceroy butterflies look very similar to monarchs. Which of these best explains how the viceroy butterflies benefits from looking like the monarch butterfly? Take a moment and read. Choose your answer and hold it up for us to see. All right, it's 2. Do y'all know what that's called? When one organism looks like another but doesn't really do the same thing? It's called mimicry. Did you know there are actually caterpillars that develop in such a way that their faces look like a small snake? They're not a snake. They don't have venom, right? But they scare other animals away because they look like something that's venomous, and that's called mimicry. Anybody know what a coral snake and a milk snake are? So they have the exact same colors. The only thing that's different is the order of those colors. Red on yellow, kill a fellow. Red on black, friend of Jack. You have ever heard that? Okay. So on that snake, if the color red touches the color yellow, it can kill you. They are one of the most venomous snakes in our area. But a milk snake can have exactly the same colors. But on it, the red touches the black, not the yellow. And most often, those snakes will not kill you. Now, I will tell you, you have to be careful with rules like that because sometimes there can be mutations. And maybe red is on black and it's actually a coral snake with a mutation. So those are just general rules. That doesn't mean go home and pick up a red, yellow, and black snake because the red touches black and then say Miss Stoley told me to, okay? All right, so the diagram shows a light and dark colored beetles that live on a tree. Which result is most likely to occur to the beetle population due to predation over time? Read your options. This is just like that moth situation we talked about, by the way. Choose your option. Yeah, it's 1. So the light-colored beetles are more fit. So they're going to live long enough to reproduce, meaning future generations are going to have more light-colored beetles. Why? What did the black beetles not do? They don't blend in. Exactly. All right, so if you would, stand to your feet, especially Terrence. I want you to go find something pink in the room, touch it, and return to your desk. You have 10 seconds. Pink. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Nice. New heading, new ink. Gene pool. Left-hand column. Gene pool is all the alleles that make up a population. Remember, we talked about mitosis and meiosis last semester. Mitosis is just where we get that identical daughter cell. And that identical daughter cell has the exact same number of chromosomes. Meiosis is where I go through a similar process, but there's 2 phases, and I actually end up with cells that are haploid, meaning they have half the chromosomes. What types of cells undergo meiosis? Who remembers? It's your gametes. Those are your sex cells. So it would be only sperm and egg undergo meiosis. And in meiosis, we end up where those chromosomes, they cross over and they kind of mix information, right? So that's why you can look like both your mom and your dad, right? Or sometimes you even have traits that show up that you don't see until your grandparents, but now they're apparent in you as well. So meiosis is where crossing over happens, and it is responsible for giving us genetic diversity. And remember, meiosis is sex cells. Sperm and egg. Gene pool, all of the alleles that make up a population. Meiosis is crossing over. It's responsible for giving us genetic diversity, and meiosis only happens in sex cells, which are the sperm and the egg. It's good to know, too, that meiosis is going to make a haploid cell, so it has half of the information. And mitosis is going to make a diploid cell, which is an exact copy of whatever it started with. All right. About to move on. New heading, new ink. Left-hand column, genetic drift. Change in population due to chance. The smaller the population, the greater the impact. The example that's given is a few individuals colonize on an isolated island. Their population will be more susceptible to change because they have little genetic diversity. So this is that example I gave yesterday. I don't know if I used it in this class of my yard, I've got yellow and green grasshoppers, but for some reason my yellow grasshoppers only hang out on the left-hand side of my yard. And somebody shows up and they only mow the left-hand side of my yard, killing off my yellow grasshoppers. The next generation, what color are my grasshoppers going to be? They're only going to be green, right? My yellow ones, because there was some sort of chance event that occurred, that population had a really big impact. Now maybe even to the point of no longer being there.
Can't grasshoppers fly?
Yeah, it's not a perfect example.
They're sleeping.
They were asleep. Very sleepy yellow grasshoppers. All right. Fist to 5, how are we doing? Couple minutes, that's fine. All right, here we go. Question. Conservation biologists studying cheetah populations have determined that the lack of genetic diversity among the cheetahs is due to genetic drift. Which statement explains the most likely consequence of having a low genetic diversity on the cheetah population? Go ahead and read your options. Hold it up. Let me see. What do you think it is? Yellow table. I'm waiting on one of y'all to commit to something. It's 3. The cheetah population becomes less likely to survive an outbreak of a disease or an environmental change, increasing the chance for species extinction. New heading, new ink, left-hand column, gene flow. This is exchange of genes with another population. This is from migration between populations. And it reduces the genetic difference between those two populations. So this is why we're talking like Asia and Europe, right? There's obvious differences between the phenotypes on those two continents, the physical appearances of people. So if someone from Asia moves to Europe and they reproduce with a European, that is gene flow. The genes from the Asia continent have now been introduced into the European continent. This is migration. Exchange of genes with another population that migrate between populations. It reduces the genetic difference between the two populations. If you want to put an example, you can put example, Asia and Europe. I think we're getting pretty close to being done.
I don't like this pen.
All right, moving on. New question. Cross-pollination of flowers from different populations of the same species will most likely result in, read your options. Make a choice and show me. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Waiting on somebody from the blue table. There we go. All right, so it's A. It's number 1. Gene flow as new alleles are introduced. New heading, new ink, left-hand column. Disruptive, directional, and stabilizing selection. Disruptive, directional, and stabilizing selection. All right, disruptive, right-hand column. It acts against the middle, favors both extremes. So I'm going to draw you. Let's say this is our population. Disruptive evolution would create, that's not the best way to go. I'm just going to change my ink color. Disruptive would actually create this. So my black line is the way my population was. My red line is what disruptive would do. So it took that median middle trait and it broke it down into 2 extremes. So if this were height, let's say the average height in the United States was 5'10", and we had disruptive selection, then I would end up with a lot of 4-foot people and maybe even some 7-foot people, but nobody in the middle. The next is directional. And I do want y'all to draw these graphs and use the 2 different inks so you can see the difference, okay? So directional is one extreme trait is selected. So my original graph would look like there's my original. And then my directional would move that trait this way. And I could move it the other way too, but I don't want to put both. If I put both, that just looks like disruptive again. So it's going to pick one side or the other. So again, same example. Let's say average height in the United States is 5'10". We have directional selection. Now everybody in the United States is 4'8". Nobody's over 4'8". The next one is stabilizing. This one acts against the 2 extremes and favors the middle. So in my stabilizing, my original graph looked, I did that wrong. My original graph looked like that. And after stabilizing selection, it now looks like that. So now there's less variation. So everyone would be exactly the same height, not even 6 inches more or less. Everybody would be closer to that middle point, closer to that average. Fist to 5, are we doing? That wasn't a whole lot to write. Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I believe this may be our last slide.
Oh my God.
New heading, new ink, left-hand column. Natural selection tips. Steps, sorry. There are two steps. Production of variation in meiosis. Remember we said that's where it's going to happen. That's where our diversity comes in. And then non-random aspects of survival. And non-random mate choice. Those are the two steps of natural selection. Organisms not possessing beneficial traits die or don't have kids. Therefore, their fitness level is low. Those traits don't get passed to the next generation. And eventually, over time, they diminish, if not completely disappear, within the population. Once you're done with this, you may go ahead and fold your Cornell notes and put them in the front pocket of your journal. I have a Kahoot for us to work on until it is time to go. We have 10 minutes remaining.